Hello, everybody. We're going to give it just a couple of seconds because we got people transferring over, jumping on. I could see the numbers going up, and we're just going to give it here about another minute, about another 60 seconds before we kick off. Okay, welcome everybody. I want to thank everybody for jumping on to the USDA Beginning Farmer Rancher webinar series that we're kicking off here today. Guys, we got an exciting lineup for you, and it's designed just for the beginning farmer and rancher. I want to thank Janet personally for putting this together. She put a lot of time in, a lot of hours getting the presenters all put together and stuff. And I also want to thank my boss, who is the acting National Beginning Farmer and Rancher Coordinator, Amanda Robinson. And Amanda will be actually presenting a little later in the program. Now, guys, we have 10 presenters, and it's designed almost, just think of it as a speed dating opportunity, okay? All of a sudden, you look over at table 5, and there's somebody really good looking over there when you're speed dating, and all of a sudden, you're going through table 3, and then you're at table 4, and you know that you're next to speed date on table 5, and bam, that person gets up and walks out the door, and you lost out on your opportunity. Guys, we don't want that today. Today, nobody's getting up and walking out on you. They're going to give you an overview of what's going on. They're going to give you an opportunity to find out where it is important for you guys, because everybody's at different levels with the beginning farmer and ranching experience. And we want to make sure that we are throwing stuff out there at a high level that is going to say, you know what, I hadn't thought of that. So after this program, you're able to delve and look into it deeper and find out exactly the specifics of it. So this webinar, this first webinar, is not going to be designed to sit there and get into a deep relationship with this program, okay? It's going to be speed dating, remember that. So you want to be able to get the nuts and bolts, what areas are important to you, and then you can start to research it and look into it. Now, the Beginning Farmer and Rancher program started in the 2014 Farm Bill, and they created regional coordinators. And Amanda and myself, we were part of the original group that got hired on to this program. There were actually like 4 of us. They wanted 5. We could never get that last one to stick. And so Amanda and myself were kind of the beginning. She covered Kentucky and Tennessee. Now, this was kind of the great experiment. She covered Kentucky, Tennessee. I had Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. And we worked closely together to help design and create what can we do to bring the program for beginning farmers and ranchers directly to you, so you guys are able to untangle this giant web, the USDA web that we call it. And then we got this tremendous opportunity in the 2018 Farm Bill. And we began the program with state coordinators. And so Amanda and myself and Sarah Campbell and a few other folks, Janet came on to the team as a detailee. And we put together training for the state coordinators. We grew it to every state now has a beginning farmer and rancher state coordinator. And through this opportunity, we were able to bring in Janet into a full-time position, working the comms end of it, handling all the prompts that Amanda and I run away from because it's too scary. So we're very grateful for Janet. Guys, Again, I'm going to tell you this program is for beginners, ranching. We have all different levels. We bring in young men and women that are coming right out of high school, FFA. We got people that are coming right out of college. We got people that are purchasing their parents' farm to continue the legacy. We also have, though, we have those people that woke up one day and says, man, I want to get back into nature. I want to get back into farming. I just don't have a clue of what to do. So we've expanded into urban ag. We've brought agriculture right smack into your town. Guys, I want you to listen, pay attention. You're not gonna get into the detail on our presenters today. But just if you keep it in mind that we're just speed dating through these 10 different areas, we're going to start off with what type of grants are out there and available, and we got two great presenters that's going to kick it off on that. Each presenter is going to have 10 minutes. 10 minutes to present to you guys, and then I'm going to be like that guy out there in the old Hollywood places with the cane, and he'd grab you by the neck and pull you out. So we're going to go ahead and just make sure we got 10 minutes each. Don't expect to get into the weeds. We just want to be able to let you know what programs are available, and then you will have the opportunity to dig into it, to research it at your own pace, and to learn at your own pace. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Laura Edwards, or she's with AMS, and she's going to talk to you first. Lee, kick it off with Grant. So Laura, kick it off.
I love an opportunity to go first. Thank you so much for the introduction and the history. Some of that was new to me, and I appreciate learning it. I'm just going to get my deck ready.
Oh, your time's up. No, I'm just teasing.
No, I'm starting my timer. I've got a timer. All right. Thanks all. Thanks for having me, and I'm really excited to share with you all a selection of grant opportunities from the Agricultural Marketing Service, and I'll drop some links in the chat with the expansive list of programs, but we've selected a couple today that we thought might resonate for the audience here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program, which is limited. So this is one-time funding, and some of the money is out the door, but want to rise it up. And then to go through 3 different grant programs that are permanently funded with annual dockets that are under the LAMP grant docket. So Farmers Market Promotion, Local Food Promotion, the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program. And then I'm going to give you a sneak peek at a brand new grant program that's going to be rolling out from AMS and our regional partners over the next 6 months or so. Some of these links that are on the slide here, I'll drop into the chat later so you can peek at them, but they're here for when we share this after the fact. So to bring you into this conversation about Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program, the RFSI, this is part of the Food Systems Transformation Framework. It is one-time funding, and it is unique because it is focusing specifically on infrastructure, which we know is a niche that can be hard to fund through USDA financing and other grant programs. This is focused on the middle of the supply chain, so this cannot be related to production, and it can't be related to direct to consumer. It is everything in between: packing, processing, aggregation, distribution, the parts where it can be difficult to fund. The RFSI program is also focused on specific food crops. So food crops that are meant for human consumption, and they do not cover meat and poultry, wild caught seafood, or animal feed, forage, fibers, etc. So these are agricultural crops meant for human consumption. So very important to note that. This is a sub-award program where Ag Marketing Services is partnering with states and territories to distribute the funds through a competitive process. There are two funding streams. One is equipment only that has a ceiling of $100,000. And the second one are infrastructure and construction grants that have a $3 million cap with a 50% match. So those are major investments that are supported through those infrastructure grants. And the purpose of the program, the eligible activities are really about making connections to strengthen the middle of the supply chain, to increase market access for producers by strengthening the middle of the supply chain. So here's the good news, bad news. Florida is open right now. Up and coming are DC, Tennessee, Wyoming, American Samoa, and the Virgin Islands. The rest of the states have already submitted their applications. I still think it's worth sharing this with you all because these sizable investments in infrastructure may have secondary benefits to producers in the state. So understanding that this program is out there, money will be hitting the ground through state agencies over the next year. You can track what projects are funded through your state agency to understand whether a new processing facility, packing, distribution effort may actually benefit the work you're trying to do on your farm. That is the RFSI program. Now we're going to transition to the LAMP grant program. So it's 3 grants that I mentioned, and these are funded by the Farm Bill. They're annual funding cycles, and they are permanent. So these are particularly relevant, and you have the opportunity to revisit the proposals if you don't get it on the first one. Farmers market promotion is really focused on direct marketing opportunities, sort of strengthening those local direct market opportunities. And there are 4 kinds of projects in the farmers market promotion program: capacity building, community development and technical assistance, turnkey marketing and promotion, turnkey recruitment and training. What does all that even mean? Capacity building is really about increasing the capacity of that particular marketing effort to meet the needs of its community. So that is very much what it's described, building the capacity of the organization. Community development, training, and technical assistance, those are larger grants, longer projects, and that's really implementation. How do we bring more producers into this market? How do we be more responsive to our community? How do we strengthen the resilience of this particular market outlet? The turnkey marketing and promotion, recruitment and training are a streamlined application. So it's less complicated and less lengthy than the standard application. And it's for a fixed set of practices. So this program has been running for many years, and the team has been able to identify sort of common best practices that they've seen over the years and create this streamlined application process to really reflect those best practices so you can hit the ground running with that turnkey application more quickly. These grants do require a match, and so that's something to think about when understanding whether or not this is a good opportunity for you. I'm going to skip through the more information slide so I can stay on my timeline. The next one is the Local Food Promotion Program. And I will say that before I joined USDA, I was an executive director at a food hub, and my introduction to AMS was applying for and implementing local food promotion program grants. So I'm a fan of this program. These are larger scale than the farmers market promotion. It's really looking at creating value chains and particularly pointing to the wholesale market or helping producers scale. Like we saw in the last program, there are several different application types. So you can apply for a planning grant, that's a shorter grant and a smaller amount of money. Implementation, so that's a full-blown program, up to $500,000 to fund that. And again, here we have those turnkey marketing and promotion, so those streamlined applications with best practices. This grant also requires a match of 25%. To be able to submit the application. Here you have the calendar and the contact information. I'm going to nail my timing. Okay, so the last one is the Regional Food Systems Partnership Grant. And as you can see, we're going from a smaller geography to a mid-sized geography. Regional Food Systems Partnership Grants are meant to fund partnerships. So the project defines its geography. It could be a couple counties, it could be a state, it could be a set of states, but the idea is that this grant is funding the development of partnerships that will strengthen market opportunities for producers in that region. There are two kinds of grants in this one. So planning and design, again, sort of setting a good foundation down the road for an implementation project. These have higher thresholds, so $1 million for an implementation grant, again, over that 36-month period that we saw in the others in the docket. Same match requirements as the other programs in the LAMP grant. And here, we won't read through what's here, but understand that because this is funding partnerships, we're looking for a mix of different kinds of entities in the proposal. So eligible entities could be a single producer, could be a producer association, a nonprofit, and then eligible partners are meant to bring in some non-traditional value chain partners. So a state agency, a philanthropic organization, a CDFI, a college or university. And so really broadening the support of the value chain that the grant is funding. Lastly, with 1 minute and 23 seconds left. So this map that you're looking at shows the Regional Food Business Center program. This is actually the program that I work on. It's a brand new program. We're in year 1 right now of cooperative agreements with 11 regions and 1 national intertribal center to invest capacity in small and mid-sized producers at the regional level to help them access new markets and scale their businesses. There's technical assistance that's a piece of this program that we're really excited about, but specific to this conversation about grants, each of those regions will be developing a sub-award program called Business Builder Grants. And that will be a maximum of $100,000 per entity over the course of the 5-year program. The projects can be up to 2 years, and it really is focused on helping producers scale their businesses and access new markets. And with some exceptions, this program is also an opportunity to invest in equipment to help do that. So again, sort of meeting a niche that some of these other grants really struggle to do, specifically for producers accessing new markets. I did it. I will hand the mic back to Rick and the rest of my colleagues. Thanks for the time, and I will drop some links in the chat for follow-up information.
Laura, you are the bomb. I wish I had you when I was a sergeant in the Army. I tell you, you kept up there just perfect. So guys, we're going to all rotate tables next, and there's going to be that good looking person sitting next to you that you're going to be rotating to a guest. I'll tell you the best thing about it though is everybody we got sitting in these 10 tables are the best. So you guys are in luck, and none of them are allowed to get up and leave until they present to you. So now we're going to call Mike Daniels from Rural Development to get up there. Michael, go ahead, take it off.
Hello, everyone. Mike Daniels from USDA Rural Development. Been working for USDA I'm starting my 39th year next week. So been around the block a couple dozen times. Working in the value-added producer grant since 2008 and in the national office since 2020. Myself and Greg York are the program leads for value-added producer grant.
Mike, let me interrupt for a minute. We're not seeing your slide deck.
Okay.
We're seeing your Zoom screen. There
we go. Wrong one. I apologize. Thanks for keeping me on track. Janet, tell me if you can see it now.
Yes, looks good. Thanks.
All right, cool beans. So basically, the value-added producer grant provides economic planning activities for eligible working capital expenses to viable ag producers to develop businesses that produce and market value-add products. So one thing that I want to say, I'm going to have a lot of slides here. The slide presentation is available. I left them in there on purpose. That way you can get a better in-depth understanding of what the program is. And then the last slide I show you is going to be my contact information and Greg's. So more than happy to chat with anybody at any time about the program. So what is value added? It's not a job training program. It's not to teach you how to farm. It's not technical assistance. It's not a research and development program. And it's not intended to be a continuous stream of funding. Application deadlines and what's available. This is a national competition, so we look at it from across the nation. This year we're going to fund about $30 million worth of projects across the nation. The highest scoring gets awarded. So what will we have for funding in 2025? If you can tell me what Congress is going to do, I can tell you how much funding we're going to have. It's kind of tongue in cheek because we also fall under the LAMP program for the mandatory funding through the Farm Bill, but then we normally have some appropriation money through the appropriations bill. So don't really know what we're going to have this next year, but if the past is an indication, it's going to be around the $30 million. We look at $75,000 for a maximum planning grant and $250,000 for a maximum working capital grant. There is a dollar for dollar match for each one of the programs. Don't let that scare you, because we have there's a lot of in kind that can be used for match. Like for working capital, you can use the value of your ag commodity. So your steer that you're selling for $2 a pound that you're taking to market, that can be as part of your match. Your time that you spent working on it can be part of your match. So there's a lot of ways around getting to that dollar for dollar match. So please don't let that scare you to push you away from it. Funding priorities, we do have a 10% set aside for beginning and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers. The good news is we have 10%. The bad news is we use that up every year. So it's a very sought out program, especially the set asides and the funding priorities. We're going to go through some of these a little bit quicker. Applicants must meet the definition of one of these type. You have to be an independent producer, ag commodity, agriculture producer group, farmer or rancher co-op, or majority owned business-based venture. The theme that ties all these together, you have to be an individual that is involved with the day-to-day production of the ag commodity. So we're not, you can't just be buying the ag commodity. You actually have to be a farmer. So that's why it fits very well in with the beginning farmer and ranchers. Again, involved with that day-to-day labor as you're. So what we're really looking for is somebody that example I've used throughout my career. You're a strawberry farmer and you have a you pick 'em patch, and you want to instead of just having the people come out and pick, you have your mom's strawberry jam recipe and you want to make strawberry jam. We're not going to help you on the agricultural side. So it's everything after the strawberry is picked. Once that strawberry is in the commercial kitchen, we can everything can be done within that commercial kitchen. So the time to clean the strawberries, the power to cook the strawberries, the sugar and pectin that would go into the strawberry jam, the jars, labels, and lids to put your jam into, your time to actually market your strawberry jam, your advertising costs. So everything for that production of that value add product. Nothing for the ag side, but everything after the strawberry is picked. The other thing that we can't do is we can't get involved with any of the bricks and sticks or mortar. So we couldn't build you a commercial kitchen. But we can't buy equipment. So anything over $5,000 is not eligible. So if you have to buy a small, say a refrigerator or a stove or something like that, we could do that, but we couldn't probably buy a commercial stove. So anything over 5,000 is not eligible. Anything under 5,000 is eligible. So something to think about. There's a lot of things we can't do, but if you start thinking about, well, if I have the expense, the grant can cover the expenses to make the strawberry jam, I won't have to do that, and I'd have the cash flow in order to really look at some of the other expenses, like if you're looking to build a commercial kitchen or something along those lines. Again, you have to produce and own at least 50% of the raw commodity that will be used in the value-added venture. And you have to own the raw commodity through the production of the value-added product through the project. So basically what we're saying is you can buy part of the ag commodity if you're not raising enough, but you have to produce and own more than at least 50% of that ag commodity. Product eligibility. So what we're looking for, again, back to the strawberry jam example, a change in physical state. That strawberry can't go back into a strawberry once it's jam. Produced in a manner that would be more like if you're growing organic, you're growing organically, that would be produced in a manner. Physical segregation, if you have non-GMO corn and GMO corn that are segregated on your farm. The one that we don't see a lot in the renewable based energy, but we haven't seen a lot more in local foods. That would be you're growing your strawberries and you're only going to market in within 400 miles of where you're at. One of the better examples of this would be like sweet corn or I can't come up with the term, sorry about that. Anyways, looking at your baskets, your food baskets, that you're selling, you're not going to be transforming that vegetable anyway, but you could sell within 400 miles of your farm. We're going to go through again, planning grant. That's really there to look at, making a determination whether or not this is a viable venture. Can you make money selling that strawberry jam? You don't know what the cost is. You don't know what your cost production is of the jam. You don't know what anybody be willing to pay for the jam. So this is a way that really can help an entrepreneur figure out, is this viable? And with the planning grants, I've had applicants that came in and said it wasn't viable, and they thought I'd be upset. No, it's answering that question. It's making that decision. Is this going to be viable? You still have skin in the game because it's a dollar for dollar match, but the government, the agency, is taking away some of that risk for you to make that determination whether this is viable or not. Working capital, that's to really make that value added product, to figure out to pay the eligible marketing expenses, the processing, like I said, the strawberry jam, everything, the labor and everything to make that jam. Again, this is for an entrepreneur to really take control of what they're doing. Instead of selling just the strawberries in a you pick 'em patch, this gives you an opportunity to really take your product, your venture, your entrepreneurial venture to a next level. Instead of just taking what you're getting for 100 weight of milk to the dairy, you can now make cheese, and if that's what you want to do. So really looking at it, there's the grants, this can help you out tremendously. Matching funds, we talked about this a touch. We have all kinds of things, and you can look at this again as we go further. So eligible use of planning grant, this is really looking at to hire someone to do a feasibility study, to help you with a marketing plan, to help you with put together a business plan to market that value-added product. And then working capital, pay costs of processing the raw commodity, packaging, labeling, ingredients, promotional activities, and advertising. We talked about that already. So when we look at the proposed, as I talked about, this is a nationwide competition. So when you're writing this application, you'll be writing it to these 5 criterion. So one thing that a big change for value added coming up in 2025. In the past, we've used our toolkits, and if you haven't seen them, they were very cumbersome. They were 60+ pages, made it really tough to to write. But it was good in its time. But we're moving on. We're moving on to a portal. This portal is going to be if anybody's used TurboTax, and that's the best example I can give you, is you're going to be able to start out your application, walk through. It's going to take you down different streams. How you're going to apply if you're as an ag producer, if you're applying for working capital or planning. It's going to walk you down through that. I'm really excited about this. This is going to I think it's going to really help applicants understand and see their product as their application come together. There's going to have a lot of tools in there that can actually contact your state rural development employee that works in value added to ask questions. So keep an eye out for this. This is going to be for the 2025 application cycle. So something that I'm really excited about to see taking the rural development into the next generation. So again, I'm pretty excited about that. I told you that this is the last screen I'm going to talk about. This is my contact information and Greg York's contact information. I'll drop this into the chat so you have our information. Please feel free to reach out to us. We want to see good applications come together. So, this is the time, right now you're all busy as ag producers. I grew up on a dairy farm, so I understand the timing. So the other thing that is a little bit different, we're looking at with the timing of the applications, going to open up November 1 and be due the 15th of February. So again, trying to make it a little bit more agreeable for ag producers when you're not so busy, growing the vegetables or growing the cattle or the livestock and producing the ag commodity. So with that, I think I can turn back a couple minutes of time to Rick and to you, Rick. So look forward to any questions.
Mr. Daniels, I appreciate you. I appreciate you jumping on. Great presentation on value-added producer grant. Folks, this is a great opportunity for you to look into a possibility of expanding your business operation, growing your business operation, adding value to your product, which is going to add value to your bottom line, and that's going to make you more successful. So, Mike, I want to thank you again for a great presentation. Guys, we're going to shift gears a little bit. Now we're going to go into FSA mode. Okay, we got Kelly, Seth, Sarah, Natalie, and closing it out with Amanda. So we're going to go 10 minutes at a pop here. One of the things that I want you guys to understand that we're going to be talking about Farm Service Agency programs. Most of them are going to be about disaster relief programs because the most riskiest business in all of the industry is farming and ranching. And we want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to get the coverage that you guys need at the most affordable price. And we want to make sure that you guys are able to stay in business if tragedy does in fact happen. So we're going to go ahead and kick this off here with Kelly. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you all today. A good day, everyone. As Rick mentioned, my name's Kelly Bryan, and I'm with the Farm Service Agency and the program manager for the Livestock Forage Disaster Program. Speaking from my other colleagues, it's going to be a challenge to try to condense these into a 10-minute presentation, but I'll do my best. But as others have mentioned, I've got a complete slide deck. So when that's available to you, there'll be quite a bit more detail available for you to review. But I encourage any questions in the chat, and I'll provide my contact information as well. But today, I will quickly review the program and its benefits that it provides to our livestock and forage producers, overall program eligibility and the application requirements. So what is LFP? LFP is one of our many disaster assistance programs that FSA administers. LFP specifically provides benefits to our livestock producers and producers of grazed forage crop acreage. So you have to be both to be eligible for this program. And this program compensates for any grazing losses that are related to drought and fire. So again, grazing losses covered under LFP are assistance for grazing losses due to a qualifying drought, and that's determined by the United States Drought Monitor. And then for fire, that's eligible only on federally managed land. Livestock producers can elect to receive assistance for drought or fire, but not both. So the LFP is administered by FSA using Commodity Credit Corporation funds authorized by the 2014 Farm Bill as amended, and the regulations, I've got a link here of where the regulations are cited in Title 7, Part 1416. And here's a link to our fact sheet. So I'll quickly review the eligibility requirements for LFP. This is a really high level again. So again, the slides will have a little bit more detail for you all to review at a later date. But so for drought, an eligible livestock producer may receive LFP assistance for grazing losses due to a qualifying drought. Has to be during your normal grazing period on the land, and that's established by the state committees in your area. The land has to be planted to crops specifically intended for grazing or native and improved pasture land. Also small grains, forage sorghum, annual crabgrass, ryegrass, or mixed forage are also could be eligible. So the grazing loss must be physically located in a county that has been rated by the following criteria during the normal grazing period. And again, this is established according to the Drought Monitor, and it varies with different payment months, different drought intensities, and duration of that drought. So here's an example of the table that outlines those periods. And for an example, a D2 for 8 consecutive weeks would equate to a payment factor of 1 in the payment calculation. So here's a link to check FSA's LFP eligibility maps. Here's an example of our current native grass LFP eligibility for 2024. This is as of July 25th. LFP also provides assistance to grazing losses due to wildfires, and this has to be only on federally managed land. So when a producer gets written notification from his federal land permit that he is prohibited from grazing his normal permitted livestock due to a qualifying fire, LFP can help compensate that. So most of FSA's programs require eligibility forms. Here's a listing of all what LFP requires, and those are all available on our farmers.gov website. I guess I will say probably the most important thing, and it is for quite a lot of our programs, is to timely file a report of acreage. So I would encourage you to really establish those relationships with your local FSA offices, get your farm records, your business plan, your farm operating plan, everything all established. You know, some of these things only really need to be established once unless there's changes. They'll need to be updated. And some of these have to be done annually. So LFP basically has 3 important components of eligibility, and we look at the producer, livestock, and land. This is a direct cite out of the regulation, but basically to be an eligible producer for LFP, you must share in the risk of producing a grazing crop and livestock, and is entitled to a share in that crop and livestock when it's available for marketing. Livestock, here's a list of our eligible covered livestock. The criteria is they have to be considered a grazing animal to where they get the majority of their nutritional needs from forage. Therefore, unweaned livestock are not eligible or considered a grazing animal, but just your basic grazing livestock, beef and dairy cattle, buffalo, alpacas, emus, llamas, sheep and goats, horses. So here's a summary of our eligibility criteria for grazing land. So again, native and improved pasture land or crops planted specifically for grazing, as I mentioned earlier. And that land has to be physically located in a county that's been designated having a qualifying drought or fire. So a quick summary of the LFP application requirements. Producers must submit an application or a CCC 853 and any required supporting documentation within 30 days after the year the grazing loss occurred. So for example, 2024 LFP, the deadline is January 30th, 2025. And I mentioned supporting documentation, and just as kind of a package of what an application really would look like. So you would have a report of acreage, your 578, your application, that's by administrative county, by physical location, supporting documentation, which I'll review next, and that has to be submitted no later than 30 calendar days after the calendar year which the grazing loss occurred. Here's a listing of what is supporting documentation. Basically, you need to have you certified your livestock inventories as of the date of designated drought. You need to provide any leases, or we also have an annual lease statement, an 855 form that can be used if the written lease is not available. Contract growers may be eligible producer, and if you are a contract grower, you would need to submit that agreement. And if this was a fire loss, you need to provide that documentation from the federal agency that you're restricted from grazing your normal permitted livestock. The eligibility forms that I mentioned on the common forms slide, and then any additional information that might be requested by the county committee to make an eligibility determination. Check my time here. I've just got a couple minutes left, so I will quickly run through an LFP payment calculation. And this is the drought payment, because about 95% of our applications are based off of drought. So again, the eligible payment months depends on the drought intensities and the duration of the drought determined by the drought monitor. FSA annually calculates a monthly value of forage based on provisions in the statute and regulation. And so for 2024, the monthly value of forage is for one animal unit is $52.56. And we equate that into our list of eligible covered livestock to that animal unit value. So one animal unit is what's considered our adult cattle, beef cattle. So that $52.56 would be equated to a beef cow. The drought payment calculation is a two-step process. So basically, we compensate 60% of the lesser of the monthly feed costs, calculated based on the number of eligible livestock or their feed needs, or available grazing land based on the normal carrying capacities for the producer. So the payment rate for mitigated livestock is also factored by 80%. And mitigated livestock can be eligible, that's livestock sold due to a qualifying drought. The fire payment calculation basically is a maximum not to exceed 180 days, and that payment rate is 50% of the monthly feed costs calculated for that grazing loss. So here is a quick livestock drought payment calculation for a common producer having native grass. And this county was designated a D3 or higher for that week. On August 15th, the producer can visit the FSA office and complete his LFP application. He's going to certify to 350 head of adult cows and bulls. He's got 2,200 acres of native grass, and he's certified that he suffered a grazing loss. Here's an example of the 853 form of that application. And it's basically a 2 or 3 step process of calculating that monthly feed cost for those 350 head of cows. So that's $18,396. The grass capabilities of carrying capacity that this producer has, using that monthly value of forage, we calculate the monthly cost using the carrying capacity of $16,519. So we look at the lesser of that, which is that $16,000 figure, and we pay on 60% of that And then we factor in that drought intensity factor of 3 because he was in D3 for 1 day during that normal grazing period. So his initial calculated payment amount would be $29,734. So one just thing to mention, the producer only needs to come in once unless they have additional land or anything that becomes available, different pasture types become available. But if that drought intensity increases throughout the grazing period, payments will automatically be issued for, say, a 3 or 4 or 5 month payment, but cannot exceed 5 monthly payments. So I've got the fire payment calculation in here, but I just emphasize that you work with your local county FSA office to understand what all disaster programs FSA has to offer. This was a quick review of the LFP program, but I will welcome all questions in the chat and put my contact information with you. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Kelly, thank you so much. Folks, you're going to find out one common thing that everybody's going to be talking about right here, and that's going to be about establishing a relationship with your county office. Most FSA and NRC offices are co-located together, so you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But I want to tell you guys, the common theme is to get signed up with a farm number and to establish a relationship. So you are knowing where you're at with these eligible programs because they may get you over the hump. Again, Kelly, I appreciate you. Seth, you're up on deck. And go ahead and kick it off. Seth Cross?
I'm here. I don't know if you can see anything.
We can see you. You can see.
All right. Well, that's good that you can see me. However, I'm trying to share my slides, so I don't know whether or not you can see that.
I'll let you know. There we go.
Okay.
All
right. Well, thanks, Rick. Well, hopefully I will keep this short and sweet. Kelly touched on a lot of different items under LFP that also apply to the emergency livestock program, which is what I'm going to go over. Emergency livestock program covers livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish. What a kind of a crazy group of things to cover under one program, but I can tell you the reason why is because when Congress invented this program, it was meant to offset anything that wasn't covered under the LFP program, like Kelly just mentioned, and the Livestock Indemnity Program, or LIP, as Sarah is going to give you information about later on in this presentation. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of ELAP because, as I said, it does obviously cover the different pieces that aren't covered under LIP and LFP, but really what it does is it's going to provide coverage for livestock for grazing loss, feed loss, water transportation, feed transportation, or livestock transportation that aren't covered under LFP. And those are important because livestock is probably one of the larger pieces of this actual program. For grazing and feed loss, of course, the grazing loss has to be something that isn't covered under LFP. So drought is not eligible. However, for the grazing loss. However, under water transportation, feed transportation, and livestock transportation, all pieces of those puzzles are based off of the eligibility due to drought, much like LFP. As we move through this, the other things covered, of course, are honeybees. Honeybees are covered for colony loss, which means the bees themselves, or the hives, the actual structures that the bees live in, and the feed that is either purchased or produced, or the requirement for additional feed purchased above normal due to an eligible disaster event. The next thing that we're going to talk a little bit about is farm-raised fish, and that is also covered under the ELAP program. That coverage really got started in 2021. Prior to 2021, we basically just covered game and bait fish. And in 21, we started covering farm-raised fish for food and opened the program up, and we're able to extend that out to producers that have farm-raised fish. So The ELAP program has changed some in the last 3 or 4 years to include some different items that weren't included before. The farm-raised fish for food is one of them. The livestock feed transportation is also another piece. And then more recently, the H5N1 coverage for dairy loss has also been added under the ELAP program. So if you own a dairy and you suffer milk loss due to that H5N1 virus, you may be eligible under the program to apply. For eligible producers, I don't know that Kelly necessarily talked about all of this, but as you can see on here, you do have to be a citizen of the U.S., a resident alien, in a partnership of citizens of the U.S. or a corporation, or be a part of an Indian tribe or tribal organization. The calculation for payments on the ELAP program are 60% of the calculated payment for livestock losses, for grazing, feed, transportation, disease, the honeybee feed losses, and the farm-raised fish feed losses. There's a 75% calculated payment for honeybee colony losses, hive losses, and farm-raised fish physical losses. Those physical losses are a match more of what the LIP program is, as opposed to the 60% losses that you saw earlier. There is also a calculation of 90% for producers who meet the definition of a socially disadvantaged, limited resource, or veteran farmer or rancher and qualify under those different item types. And then, of course, that recently added H5N1, like I spoke about as well, if you own a dairy, is automatically qualified for the 90% payment calculation factor. So let's talk a little bit about the livestock losses under ELAP and what's covered. And I'm going to give you a really short version of that because it's really in depth and we don't have enough time to go through each and everything. But for eligible livestock under the ELAP program, they have to have been animals that are normally grazing eligible land during their grazing period. Confinement dairies or feedlots with no grazing land are eligible at this time because of the regulation for the program. Owned, leased, purchased, or under contract purchasers do require that they own them for at least 60 days prior to the loss. Commercial use, or they must be commercially used or contribute to the commercial viability of a farm program. As you can tell, there are some examples with the exceptions. Of course, producer owns 500 head of cow-calf pairs, 5 horses used for working cattle and for 4-H shows. In this case, because they are working on the ranch, those horses are also eligible. Even though they wouldn't normally be what you'd consider a grazing livestock, they would be eligible under the ELAP program as well, as long as they are grazing. Unweaned livestock, except for water hauling. For water hauling, only unweaned less than 500 pounds are available. Any non-commercial use, such as owner's own consumption, racing or wagering animals, wild or free roaming livestock, and unfortunately, yaks are not considered eligible because they're considered under non-commercial use. The unweaned livestock, of course, there are some exceptions to that in different parts of the livestock losses. Obviously, if the water hauling, they don't apply. For the eligible drought, much like the LFP program for ELAP, for the feed and livestock transportation and the water hauling, there are qualifications that have to be met. Of course, we use the U.S. drought monitor, much like we do under LFP. So we would need 8 consecutive weeks at a D2 qualification or an automatic qualification of D3 or D4 during the grazing period for each and every item that's listed under there as eligible grazing conditions. One thing that we also changed starting in 2024, the program did follow grazing days depending on the state you were in. The LFP and NAP and ELAP all followed. In 2024, we were able to expand the ELAP program because the regulation allowed us to be able to make the entire year for annually grown forages to be eligible under the drought transportation piece of the program. So that was another shift that happened in 2024 that's opened ELAP up even further. Next, I'm going to hit on honeybee losses. And basically, to be an eligible producer, you just have to have a risk in the eligibility for the common part of a farming operation, meaning there has to be some type of either honey production, pollination, or honeybee breeding operation that's commercially available. And you have to have risk at the beginning date of the eligible adverse weather condition, which makes sense, right? You would have to have risk in order to qualify for a program. And that's basically what the ELAP program requires, just like all other programs under FSA. Honeybees housed or managed in a hive for honey production, pollination, or breeding, of course, would be eligible. Honeybees that are wild, feral, or leafcutter bees are not eligible, or other bee species that aren't used for producing honey, pollinating, or breeding, like a hobby farm, would not be eligible under the ELAP program. Under the farm-raised fish program, as we talked about, that was extended out in 2021, but the farm-raised fish program, or again, the producers that are under the farm-raised fish program, are those that produce an eligible farm-raised fish that's maintained for fish or commercial use as part of a farming operation. They do have to propagate and rear those fish in a controlled environment, and they have to use good farming and management practices in order to qualify for the ELAP program for farm-raised fish. To be considered eligible at the time of the loss, the producer, again, much like we do for honeybees and livestock, they have to own or lease the property with identifiable boundaries, have control of the water or the column or the ground under the type of water, depending on where those aquaculture is raised. And they have to have purchased or produced feed for the farm raised, if applicable. Obviously, there's different types of varieties of aquaculture that are eligible that you don't have to feed. If they're grown in the ocean, like mollusks, like clams and oysters, you don't feed those. Of course, they would be eligible under this program as well. And as we talked about before, you do have to use good farming and management practices. That good farming and management practices is really just a matter of what cultural practices we use to make normal progress towards maturity for those farm-raised fish for expected production and generally recognized by agricultural experts in the area. Farm-raised fish are following according to those practices. They have to be controlled and maintained for harvest. And then, of course, their aquatic environment has to be properly maintained and potential hazards need to be removed. In essence, what that means is that you just can't have wild growing fish and make them eligible under the program. So if you're, if you're going out and collecting shrimp out of the Gulf Coast, you wouldn't be eligible for this program. You have to have actually have a controlled environment where you put those fish or aquaculture species into. For the application process, it's really quite simple. You have to fill out a notice of loss, and then you have to fill out an application for payment. And under ELAP, January 30th of the following calendar year is always the deadline for both of those. It used to be the notice of loss had to be filed within a specific time frame of when the loss event occurred. In 2023 and 2024, we were able to move that out to January 30th based off the deputy administrator's advice. And hopefully we'll be able to continue that within the next farm bill. That producer also, like I said, has to file an application for payment on the following January 30th of the calendar year. And an application for payment has to have all the information needed to determine a payment amount in order to qualify. And that's my 10 minutes, but I'll hit these last couple slides really fast. Acceptable documentation is going to be required. It just needs to be verifiable or reliable. There's a lot of producer certification that makes a producer eligible under ELAP and can be used when acceptable documents aren't available, or if similar producers have comparable water losses in their area. And again, the service locator is a great way to identify where you need to go in order to apply for these programs. And with that, I'll try to give some time back. Thank you, Rick.
Seth, I appreciate you guys. Seth, you ought to have a side job being an auctioneer. You're so clear. You blow right through it. You did a great job. We're blessed to have you, my friend. Thank you so much. Guys, big challenge up to the rest of the team up here. These guys are knocking it out of the park with their 10 minutes. Haven't had to use my cane yet and yank anybody off of the stage. I'm grateful for that. Next up, we got Sarah. Sarah, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Can you see? I'm thinking you can see my presentation. If not, you can let me know. So I'm covering
looks good, Sarah.
Okay, I'm covering the Livestock Indemnity Program, which is one of the 3 livestock disaster programs FSA has to do the portfolio, and Kelly and Seth talked about the previous 2. So the Livestock Indemnity Program, it provides assistance to eligible livestock producers who have a death loss in excess of normal mortality to an eligible loss condition, so basically a weather event, and then or if they have the livestock are injured and have to be sold at a reduced price because of an eligible loss condition. To be eligible for LIP provisions, you have to meet these criteria, basically be a citizen of the United States or a resident alien or a part of an Indian tribe or an entity made up those individuals. But to get more to the crux of it, you either have to be an eligible livestock owner as of the day of the eligible loss condition, which basically means you had a risk in those animals that died or that were injured because of that eligible loss condition. And if you're not the eligible livestock owner, the only other option would be a contract grower, but that's specifically for poultry or swine producers. And you have to have a written contract that gives you control of those eligible livestock and risk of loss in those eligible livestock on the day of that loss condition. And if you are that contract grower, you have to provide that contract to FSA. The eligible livestock are similar to what you saw under LFP and for ELAP that we have eligible. The only thing is we do adult and non-adult, and we don't care if they're weaned or not weaned. We cover newborn baby calves to a feeder calf to also water buffalo and a lot of other different types of livestock. So the eligible livestock to be eligible, they must be owned on that eligible on the day of the eligible loss condition by that eligible producer, be maintained or produced for commercial use of that livestock operation, and had to have died in excess of normal mortality or were sold due to an injury from that eligible loss condition within 30 calendar days of when that loss condition occurred. The national payment rate for LIP, which Seth alluded to, is 75% of the average fair market value, which is set by the or is determined by CCC, which is part of Farm Service Agency. And the payment rates every year, they're announced and put into our fact sheet. And you can find those for each weight, kind, and type of livestock. It's a fairly long list. When you saw all those eligible livestock and we do adult and non-adult, it starts making the list long. So I didn't provide those, but I do have a link to our fact sheet at the end that will help provide what those rates are. So you're probably wondering what those eligible loss conditions are. As you can see, it's mostly weather or events that would happen from earthquake, hail, lightning, tornado, tropical storms, typhoon, fog, hurricanes, flood, blizzards, wildfire, extreme heat, extreme cold, straight line winds, and eligible winter storm. Now, I would point out that we do have specific definitions for blizzard and eligible winter storm, which really align with the National Weather Service and what their definitions are. But for extreme heat and extreme cold, every one of those, every state sets them for their area. And because if you think about it, extreme heat in Nebraska is different than extreme heat in Montana, and extreme cold varies also across the country. So those are set by each state committee, and they do come up to our national office to make sure we're trying to stay consistent across the nation. So to apply for the program, the first step, just like with ELAP, is to do a notice of loss. One thing that's different from ELAP, the notice of loss has to be filed by the application deadline, which is the same, but the application deadline is different for LIP. It's 60 calendar days following the calendar year. So in most years, that is March 1st, but in a year like this year, where it was leap year, it was February 29th. So along with filing that notice of loss, you have to also request an application for payment. And to do that, you complete your application by the program deadline, which is at 60 calendar days following the calendar year. And that application, just like with ELAP, provides all the documentation we need to calculate that payment and all the information we need. And that information has to be supported by what we call acceptable supporting documentation. So acceptable supporting documentation has to be a verifiable or reliable record that the producer can provide us. There's not certification like ELAP has underneath the LIP program. So the documentation that we needs to be for beginning inventory, because we have to figure out in excess of normal mortality. So we take the beginning inventory for a producer times the normal mortality rate, which is set at the national level, but state committees have the authority to look at them and see if in their region it is lower than or higher than the national one. And then national office can concur if those should be adjusted from the national level. So it takes the beginning inventory times that normal mortality rate to come up with that normal mortality threshold is. And then any death loss that occurs above that normal mortality threshold, because that eligible weather event is ineligible. So then that comes into having to provide documentation to support that death loss. And these different types of records, usually that we see a lot of are maybe a producer's balance sheet that has their inventories on it. Their calving or lambing or kidding records, their birthing records they have for their animals. Dated photographs is another huge one that we see a lot of. But the records show when the livestock died, what they died from, and then beginning inventory. Usually what we start with is something at the beginning of the calendar year, but it just depends. It has to be the beginning inventory on the day before the eligible loss condition. And then we have documentation to support your weather event. Sometimes county offices are able to find those events in the documentation by the different weather stations, but in some of our more remote areas, having some producers help pinpoint where those areas are and what the weather conditions are and what documentation they have for it really helps us to make sure we're providing producers with the assistance for those weather events that happen. And then, like I said earlier, if you're a contract grower, we have to have that contract. There's also payment eligibility forms that have to be provided. So we really have two different types of supporting documents. We have the stuff that supports what's on the application, and then our payment eligibility deals with wetland and highly erodible land compliance that's required underneath our different rules. And then 941 is the average adjusted gross income rules that have to be followed. To apply, you apply at your local FSA office where that loss condition happened. And to find that, you can go to the local FSA office link here to help locate where your service center is for you. And again, yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Phil. You got time.
Okay. I'm Sarah Heights at Krager, but you can find me under Sarah Krager at USDA.gov. Here's my phone number. And then I gave you the link to the fact sheet, has a lot more details and provides those payment rates like I talked about. But I should be under my 10 minutes, and that's all I have.
Sarah, you did a great job. We appreciate you. Guys, I want you to understand the challenge. These people do this on a professional basis, but they will take a whole hour. They will give you a class on it. They go in depth. And so what we're asking them to do is we're really pulling them out of their comfort zone to be able to put together something here in 10 minutes. And then you got Rick Lopez out here harping on them, browbeating them and stuff like that. So you guys are doing a great job and we're indebted to you. So Natalie, you're next up on deck.
Hello. Okay. All right. So, hello, I am Natalie Prince. I'm a program specialist for the USDA Farm Service Agency. I work in the disaster assistance section, and I've been in this role since 2020.
Natalie,
oh, am I sharing the wrong screen?
You're not sharing it all yet.
Okay, there we go. Now you should be able to see me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so I've been in this role since 2020, and I've been with FSA since 2004. So today I'm going to discuss the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, or NAP, with you. So what is NAP? So NAP is a risk protection program that provides financial assistance to producers that grow crops that are not covered through traditional crop insurance. So it'll protect against natural disasters that result in lower yields, crop losses, or that prevent the planting of a crop. So to be eligible for NAP, a producer has to be a landowner, tenant, or sharecropper that has an ownership share and risk of producing an eligible crop. For NAP, an eligible producer's average adjusted gross income, or AGI, must not exceed $900,000 to be eligible for payment. Any NAP payments received will be attributed to the individual or entity and will be limited to $125,000 for basic coverage and $300,000 for buy-up coverage. And that's per crop or per crop year per individual or entity. An eligible crop for NAP must be a commercially produced crop or commodity for which crop insurance is not available. This includes crops grown for food, livestock consumption, fiber, crops grown in a controlled environment, industrial crops, specialty crops, crops grown for seed, and value loss crops. NAP will cover losses associated with eligible natural disasters. These eligible causes of loss include damaging weather events such as drought, freeze, hail, excessive moisture, excessive wind, tornadoes, and hurricanes. Also covered are adverse natural occurrences such as an earthquake or flood, heat, insect infestation, disease, or wildfires can also be eligible if they are related to a damaging weather event or an adverse natural occurrence. However, these related conditions are not eligible on their own. For any loss due to a disaster event to be eligible, the event must have directly affected an eligible crop during the coverage period of that crop. So that would be before or during harvest. So NAP offers multiple coverage levels of protection for producers. So first, basic or CAT level coverage is available. It will cover a 50% or greater loss of production at 55% of the average market price for the crop. Producers can also elect buy-up coverage with yield levels ranging from 50 to 65%, increasing in 5% increments, and at 100% of the average market price for the crop. So for example, if a producer elects 5100 buy-up coverage and experiences a 50% or greater loss, they could potentially trigger a loss payment, which would be based off 100% of the crop's average market price. Then if that same producer elected 55 100 buy-up coverage, losses must exceed 45% to trigger a potential loss payment. For 60-100 buy-up coverage, losses must exceed 40%. And for 65-100 buy-up coverage, losses must exceed 35%. If a producer has a prevented planting claim, at least 35% of the crop must have been prevented from being planted to trigger a potential loss payment. And then just a little note on grazing crops. Crops and grasses intended for grazing are only eligible to receive basic coverage. They are not eligible for buy-up due to the availability of LFP, which was discussed earlier. So NAP has two ways to request coverage. Producers can complete a CCC 471 form to receive basic or buy-up coverage, or they can certify to socially disadvantaged, beginning farmer, veteran farmer, or rancher, and limited resource producer on a CCC 860 form to receive basic CAT level coverage. With either of these options, coverage for eligible crops can't begin earlier than 1 calendar day after the application for coverage is filed or signed. So producers can complete a CCC 471 to request basic or buy-up coverage for eligible crops. The 471 allows a producer to select what crops they want covered and at what coverage level. The applicable service fee or service fee waiver must be submitted with the CCC 471 application for coverage prior to the crop's application closing date. And it must be done in the FSA county office where their farm records are maintained. So the Agricultural Disaster Assistance Program final rule was published on January 11th, 2023, which allowed FSA to designate the CCC 860 as a NAP application for basic coverage, beginning in program year 22 and for future years. So this allows any producer with socially disadvantaged, beginning farmer or rancher, veteran farmer or rancher, or limited resource certification on a CCC 860 to be eligible for basic coverage on all eligible NAP crops grown in all counties nationwide for each program year the certification is applicable. The 860 will serve as the application for basic coverage and coverage will be established based on the date the CCC 860 is signed and the producer's acknowledgement of the NAP basic provisions. If a producer wishes to elect buy-up coverage, they're still required to complete a CCC 471 indicating what crops they want covered and at what coverage level. And if a producer with an 860 certification decides they do not want to cover any of their crops, they're also able to opt out of coverage on a new CCC 860 form. All coverage options, basic and buy-up for NAP, require a service fee or service fee waiver to be submitted with the application for coverage in order for it to be considered filed. Service fees are $325 per crop, up to $825 per producer per administrative county. And then if a producer participates in multiple administrative counties, they will not pay more than $1,950 nationwide for service fees. Service fees will be waived for producers who meet the definition of socially disadvantaged, beginning farmer, rancher, veteran farmer, rancher, or limited resource producer, as long as their certification is applicable. Premiums are required for producers who request buy-up coverage, and this is in addition to the service fee. Premium amounts due will differ depending on the coverage level elected for each crop, but will not exceed $15,750 for an individual. A 50% premium bill reduction will be applied for producers who certify to meeting the definition of socially disadvantaged, beginning a farmer or rancher, veteran farmer or rancher, and limited resource producer. To remain eligible for NAP assistance, crop acreage and production information must be reported annually. Acreage reports will include the name, type, and variety of each crop planted, along with the location and acreage of the crop. The practice, meaning irrigated or non-irrigated, intended use and date the crop was planted, as well as the producer's names and shares, will be reported on the FSA 578 shortly after planted, so early in the risk period, to ensure reporting deadlines are not missed and coverage is not lost. Producers must also certify production for every crop covered by NAP with an FSA 578 on file. The quantity of all harvested production, disposition of the harvested crop, and acceptable production records should be provided to FSA each year a crop is planted. The certified production supports the establishment and maintenance of an approved yield for each crop type, intended use, practice, and planting period in a year with no loss, and is also required to support an application for payment any year a loss is reported. In the event that a crop or planting is affected by a natural disaster, producers with NAP coverage should file a notice of loss and apply for payment. Producers with hand-harvested and perishable crops should contact FSA, their local county office, within 72 hours of when a loss is apparent. This will allow a field visit to be done to document the disaster event occurred and affected the crop. All producers need to complete a notice of loss within 15 calendar days of the earlier of a disaster occurring, or the date of loss becomes apparent, or the normal harvest date for that crop. For prevented planting claims, the notice of loss must be submitted within 15 calendar days after the final planting date for the crop. A producer must also file an application for payment. This has to be completed within 60 calendar days after the coverage period ends, meaning after harvest or destruction or abandonment of the crop, for any NAP covered crop in the unit. All required documentation must be submitted with the FSA or with the CCC 576 for the application for payment to be considered filed. This includes an acreage report, the notice of loss, and an acceptable certification of production supporting the request for payment.
Hey,
So now-
Natalie, we're gonna go pull out the cane for the first person out here, and we're gonna have to move on just for time, but we sure do appreciate it. Guys, NAP insurance is one of your most important programs that you're gonna need. And when we have our next speaker up here, they're gonna talk about loans and whatnot. Guys, they're not gonna allow you to apply for these loans and stuff like that if you get a loan unless you have at least NAP insurance. NAP insurance is critical. And Natalie, you did a great job, and we're definitely very, very appreciative of you. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Rick. And this was my last slide, so I'll make sure when the slides get going that you'll have all of them with you.
Thank you.
Sharing.
Okay. All right, guys. Next up on the I made a promise, and I told Amanda that I would not tell you that she is my boss. Okay, so don't ask me if Amanda's my boss, because I'm not going to tell you that Amanda's my boss. So don't ask. Okay, I make that promise. I'm not going to tell you guys that. Okay, our next presenter we have up here is Amanda. She is the acting National Beginner Farmer Rancher Coordinator, and she is one of the original coordinators that started off with when the Farm Bill kicked off. So Amanda, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and presenting on behalf of the Farm Service Agency to bring to you information about the Farm Loan Program. So what does FSA Farm Loans do? They provide access to land and capital. They assist in scaling your operation. They require no down payment for direct loans, which is very unique to conventional lenders. And then we have low interest rates and flexible loan terms. So first of all, I want to talk about something that there's a lot of misconception. A lot of folks think that when we talk about our beginning farmers and ranchers, our minority and women farmer and ranchers, and even our veteran farmers, that we have loans specifically for these individuals. When we mention this, it's simply saying we have, for the beginning farmers and ranchers and the minority and women groups, we have targeted loan funds. So there's loan funds that are set aside for those specific groups. Our veterans, oftentimes, when we talk about them, for example, when we're going to talk later on about the farm ownership loan, there's a requirement there that you must have 3 years of farming experience. If you served in the armed forces, you had an honorable discharge, perhaps you had a leadership role there, one of those years can be used as experience. So that's where our veteran incentives kick in. For all of our farm loans, we have general eligibility requirements that we're going to talk about very quickly. These are requirements for any of the loans that you want to apply for through the Farm Service Agency. So you must be a family farmer or rancher, have satisfactory credit history. I want to point out here, a lot of folks ask what the credit score has to be. We do not go solely on credit score. We're simply looking at your credit history, meaning how you repay the loans that you have, what shows up on your credit report. You must have not provided FSA with false information in the past. You must be a U.S. citizen, a non-citizen national, or a qualified alien. Also, you must be unable to obtain credit elsewhere at reasonable rates and terms. FSA is often known as the lender of first opportunity, simply because of the flexibilities that we have. We have servicing options. And I often say that the key to lending, and especially at FSA, is communication. We want folks to communicate with the loan officials that they're working with. As was stated by farm programs, we want you to build that relationship with the local service center. You must have the legal capacity to incur obligations of the loan, not have outstanding unpaid U.S. judgments, and not be delinquent on any federal debt. So be sure to pay your taxes if you're going to apply for a loan. You can have not been convicted of growing, producing, harvesting, or storing a controlled substance within the last 5 years. You cannot have received debt forgiveness from FSA. However, we have noted here there are exceptions to this. Again, that's why it's so important for you to connect and have conversations with your local USDA service center. You must have the training, education, or farm experience that's needed to manage the farm or ranch operation that you're requesting assistance for. We're going to dive right into the types of loans that we have. First off is our farm ownership loan. And I want to note, you can apply for these loans at any time. There are no deadlines. You can submit an application for loan assistance at any time that you wish. So our farm ownership loans are used to purchase land, to make capital improvements, soil and water conservation needs. We can address those. And also loan funds can be used for closing costs. With our farm ownership loan, there are closing costs associated with this type of loan, simply because we must work with an attorney to do the legal work, preparing the mortgage, the deeds, the title search, things such as that. Also, there will be an appraisal that will be done on the property that you're looking to purchase, but the government does pay for that. These loans can be termed over 40 years, and we have a maximum loan amount of $600,000. Our operating loans we can term those over 1 to 7 years. If you're looking to purchase crop inputs for the year, you're wanting to do a feeder cattle operation, anything that would mature within a 12-month period, just like a bank, we do those on an annual basis. Now, unlike a conventional lender, it's not an evolving line of credit. You must reapply every year for that annual operating loan. If you're looking to purchase equipment or livestock, we term that over 7 years. And I will say the interest rate is locked in for the life of the loan. You can also pay that loan off at any time. We set your payments up on annual installments, but you're welcome to pay however frequently you would like and to pay that loan off before it matures, and there are no penalties. The loan limit for our operating loans is $400,000. Now, the microloan is it's a loan program that's very beneficial to a lot of our beginning farmers. It opens the door for them, works just like our operating loans. However, it's a more simplified loan process and a little bit easier to navigate. We do offer the opportunity to use it to purchase real estate. However, for the microloans, those are termed over 25 years instead of 40. Something that I'm very passionate about. I'm proud that we do this, supporting the next generation of farmers and ranchers and our youth. So we have a youth loan program for ages 10 to 20. It's used to support income producing ag-related projects. The maximum loan amount is $5,000. It works just like the operating loans for, say, their parents or grandparents. Terms, rates, everything remains the same. Our guaranteed loan program, these are for our larger operations, I would say, when the loan requests exceed what we can do through our direct loan program at FSA. So we actually partner and we guarantee that loan request. We can go up to 95%. So you, the producer, would work with another lender, such as Farm Credit, a bank, any other conventional lender, and that lender would become FSA's customer. So our loan limit on that is $2,236,000. And the rates, terms, all of that's negotiated with the lender that you're working with outside of USDA. Our down payment loan program. We mentioned those special targeted groups in the beginning. This is a loan that helps to provide support to them if they're looking to purchase land, the down payment loan program. They must be a beginning farmer, veteran, a socially disadvantaged producer. And this loan is a little bit different as it does require a 5% down payment. Now we're working jointly with another lender. So the Farm Service Agency provides 45% of the financing for the purchase price of that land. And the other lender picks up the remaining 50% of the loan. So it's a great loan program for beginning farmers to be able to purchase land. So we've talked about these loan programs. So you may be wondering how I know which loan program is best suited for me as I'm starting this venture or if I'm looking to expand. We have an online loan assistance tool, and we'll go through some eligibility questions for you. And at the end, it will populate which loan may be best suited for you and your operation. If you're looking to apply for a direct loan program, you can do that in person or you can do it online. Again, I've dropped the service center locator here. You've heard that several times throughout the day in these presentations, but it's so important, once again, to have that interaction with the local office. If you want to apply online, there are some steps that you need to take to be able to do that. You must set up a farmers.gov account, and you may need a level 2 e-authentication account. Now, again, your local service center can provide you with information on that as well. In addition to those two online portals that we've talked about, if you do get a loan from FSA, we have the option for you to pay that loan online through the Pay My Loan portal. You can check that out once you're established. And then two, if you are new to farming, ranching, and to USDA, no worries. We have our state beginning farmer rancher coordinators in all 50 states and the territories. We've dropped the locator here, the directory to all of our state coordinators. And also we've dropped a link to our new farmer page on farmers.gov. And there you will find a step-by-step guide that will assist you in getting started with your farming and ranching operation. And I believe it might be in section 3, don't hold me to that, but there is a section specifically on funding. So you can learn about all the different resources and tools that are available to you for financing your operation and financial assistance from the various agencies that you heard about today. So that's all I have very quickly, Rick, but happy to answer any questions that folks may have in the chat.
Amanda, thank you so much. You covered so much ground. You were so clear on it. I think these folks out there that will definitely see something that may be of pertinent interest to them. I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know it's almost impossible to do under 10 minutes, but the challenge was definitely met. Folks, we're gonna shift gears now. We really focus there on the Farm Service Agency, but we have 3 other agencies that 10 minutes will not do them justice, not do them justice at all, but it's important that we stick to that 10 minutes. But these are 3 other programs that you are going to need to be familiar with if you're going to be successful in farming and ranching, especially if you're a beginning farmer or rancher or veteran. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off with NRCS and invite Jerry to jump on.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Jerry Rayner here. I am the FAPD director with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I have so many screens available. If you guys would give me a second, I'm going to start closing these out here. Let's see. Are we able to see my screen at this point?
Yes.
Right. Wonderful, wonderful. Again, Jerry Rayner, Financial Assistance Program Division Director with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. On the screen, you'll see our mission, our motto of helping people help the land, and we truly do that. I know we've talked about, and over the presentations, you've talked about loans, you've talked about commodity and productions and the other assistance that USDA provides. Now we're going to kind of shift gears into conservation, into the protection of our natural resources, and how private lands is the key to what we do, and to continue this legacy of agriculture and conservation that we all hold so near and dear. But NRCS provides one-on-one personal advice. Making the investments that you need on your operations to be impactful there, keep you productive, benefiting local communities. But along with that, the data we share, the technology that we're able to advance and get to the producers who are going to be impactful in our mission of protecting the land and the resources that we, like I said, we hold near and dear. These resources that are so productive, that are helping us grow crops, that are helping us feed the nation, our soil, water, air, plants, animals. We just continue to expand that list of resources that we are impacting here. First thing I do want to share with you, everything that NRCS provides is voluntary conservation, no regulatory approach at all. We do that through technical committees, local working groups, local soil and water conservation districts, outreach and awareness program with conservation partners. You have an opportunity as a producer to be involved in several of these groups or working groups, sitting into some of our outreach and awareness sessions, gaining more knowledge about conservation programs. and what NRCS provides across the landscape. Everything we do, like I said, voluntary approach, not regulatory at all. We help solve all kind of resource issues, from small things to large scale. You can imagine being traveling across the landscape and noticing some of the rainfall or drought or climate change situations that we are impacting as well. But what we do is all science-based. I kind of love this slide here. It kind of gives you a glimpse into all the areas. Let me not say all, a few of the areas that are we are really impactful when it comes to climate and agronomy and biology and engineers and soils and forestry. And we have the technical resources, the data behind it to say that the science is solid. And this is why conservation practices are impacting our environment. They're impacting the natural resources. They're making them more productive. So when you look across the landscape, guys, we are essentially everywhere. I know it's been put in the chat, the local USDA service centers in your states, make sure that's the first stop for you. And with all of us being in the same house there, stay for a visit. It will be impactful to your operations. It all starts with the customer's land. When I say it's a voluntary approach, I'm going to touch on a couple of programs here in a second. I'm going to kind of give you our big five. I'm going to really touch on two of those that would be starting points or most impactful for our beginning farmers and ranchers. But when we say it starts on the customer land, the first program I will touch on right now is a conservation technical assistance. You'll hear those acronyms, CTA, but CTA is that conservation technical assistance. What that means, that is an opportunity for us to visit with you on your landscape to determine what are those resource concerns, what you've noticed, what we may notice, things you may not even recognize as a resource concern. The things we do impact production. They improve the soil, they improve wildlife habitat. We cover a wide range of services, but it starts with us making that one-on-one visit. So when we talk about visiting the local service center, when you visit with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, make sure we don't shortchange you by not visiting with you on that landscape. That's where it all starts. The programs I'm going to highlight today, I just have them kind of listed here. I could be here for 4 hours just going through these programs. But the conservation technical assistance, I mentioned it, and I have them kind of labeled as ongoing. This particular, it is a program for our agency, but this is a program that gets us all sitting around the table to talk about your operation. What are the resource concerns? What are the challenges you're having? And coming up with a plan to say, how do we address what those concerns are? What typically comes out of this CTA visit would be a conservation plan. And with that, and I have it listed as TA, NRCS assistance, we kind of break that down into two categories: technical assistance versus financial assistance. Technical assistance is basically you and us having that visit, doing the resource, the assessment on the farm. Whatever resource we want to focus on, we can do a progressive plan, which we may focus on one particular resource concern. We can do a whole farm plan, kind of lay that out of all the things that you may want to address. Keep in mind, all of this is voluntary. Just because we develop a plan, you don't have to do any of it. But if there are things on that plan you would like to do, now we take the next steps. So let me just touch on real quick the next 4 programs, but I'm only going to talk about EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and CSP, the Stewardship Program. So with ASEP, our Agriculture Conservation Easement Program, for those beginning farmers and ranchers, some may be, as Rick said earlier, coming back to the family farm, now going to be the folks taking over, leading the charge from that point on. If you're interested in preserving that land in a conservation easement to keep it a operating working farm in perpetuity, we have conservation easement options for working lands as well as wetland areas as well. The Regional Conservation Partnership Program is kind of a mix between EQIP and CSP, but this program is led completely by partners. So you may belong to a coalition, a co-op, who says, you know what, we have a huge group of farmers that we would love to have a program or a dedicated source of funding that can help these particular producers. As a partnership, let's apply for a partnership program. Let's focus on some conservation practices. That way we can make sure we're doing our part to impact the environment, to get these conservation practices on the ground, along with making our farms and ranches more productive. So we have those as options. EQIP is our bread and butter. EQIP is typically that starting point for your farm if you're having erosion problems. EQIP helps us solve those. If you're having water quality issues, conservation practices are what we're installing under these programs on the landscape to support your operation. And with these programs, I have that contract averages are about 5 years. It could be 1 to 2 years, depending on the practice themselves. It could be as much as 10 years, just depending on the extension of the program. Typically, we try to keep that around a 5-year period because we like to operate within farm bills. We don't want statute and law to change that then will impact your previous contract. You're not restricted to just one EQIP application. Through these applications, we are addressing resource concerns. So CSP, not only are we, or the Conservation Stewardship Program, not only are we addressing resource concerns, we're looking at your operation to determine what are you already doing? What stewardship level are you performing right now? What resource concerns are you protecting right now in your operation? And then how would you like to enhance those? So it's kind of a two-part program. So whatever you're doing now, let's reward those producers that are doing an outstanding job. But if those producers are saying, Jerry, we would love to advance or enhance our conservation efforts on this operation, this program allows us to be able to do that. So with all of these programs, we are implementing our conservation practices. And that could be anything from a engineered structural practice to cover crops, to changing your crop rotation, to taking unproductive land and putting it into permanent wildlife habitat or establishing forested areas. Those are conservation practices that benefit the environment, that solve these resource concerns. And those are the practices that we would be communicating with you on, helping you to determine how would you like to solve this issue, and then kind of pulling out that list of practices to say, here's some options for you. What would you like to do in your operation? Everything we do, as I mentioned, is voluntary, but it's based on your decisions for your operation. There may be some things that we cannot offer assistance with, maybe some things that we can, and we can possibly do that from a 1 to 2 year contract under EQIP. That contract could then possibly move forward to a stewardship program contract. Our contracts are competitive. And so I kind of highlight those programs for you, but I like to kind of give you some information to get you started. If you're visiting our website with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, there are details into these programs, details into the practice. But for me, where do we get started? Where do we get started with any of this? Visit the local soil and water conservation district in your state. That's where you start. And like I said, you can visit with the Natural Resource Conservation Service. You can visit with FSA. Soil and Water Partners may be additional partners in that office. We're not quite Walmart, but we are a one-stop shop when it comes to agriculture in some aspects. And again, that's the starting point for the CTA, getting on the ground, visiting visiting you on site. Do not let us shortchange you by not visiting with you on the site to help walk the land. Basically, that's our assessment in determining where some of these resource concerns may be. Once that, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, go ahead, wrap it up. Go ahead.
Okay, I got 1 minute. The next step with that, I would say, once you have that conservation plan in place, you made some decisions of what you would like to do. Let's sit down and visit, and then we can help determine which program would be the best fit for you. We can get into the details of which program, what practices, what would be the cost share reimbursement for these programs, and then the details of possibly moving into a contract. What are the contract details? What are the requirements for implementation? What are we going to be reviewing or assessing to say this practice has been installed and reimbursing you for the work that you've done on the landscape? So, and the last thing, if nothing else, guys, build that relationship, because you may only address one resource concern this year. Next year, you may buy another farm to address additional resource concerns. Let's always visit. Let's build that relationship. So when you pick up the phone to call Jerry and you've picked up another piece of property, we can set a time to visit with that on that landscape too. And let's work on conservation on that landscape as well. We will be dropping some information in the chat. Be glad to try to address any questions you may have, but please visit that local soil and water conservation office, the USDA Service Center, NRCS, FSA, and trust me, guys, we will direct you in the right direction. We will get you to the right people, and we will help you solve some of your resource concerns on your operation. Rick, I'm going to stop there. I know we're pressing time, but I appreciate the opportunity to kind of share this information really quickly.
Mr. Rayner, we appreciate you. We appreciate the way you, how well you defined how all the agencies work together. Guys, if you're a beginning farmer and rancher, NRCS is a must, because these are the experts. These guys are the folks that are going to sit there and tell you why your corn is 3 inches tall and your neighbor's corn is 16 inches tall during the growing season. So guys, get with them. It's imperative, and the programs they offer are second to none. So Mr. Rayner, I appreciate you coming on and your great presentation. Michael Green, you're next up on deck with RMA, and RMA is just an absolute critical component. So Michael, go ahead and take it away.
Just trying to get my video up. Okay, great. My name is Michael Green, and I'm here with the USDA Risk Management Agency, and I'm going to be talking to you about the basics of crop insurance. So the Risk Management Agency, what we do is federal crop insurance. Just like you have car insurance, or maybe you have homeowners insurance, federal crop insurance is out there to help you insure your crop against natural causes of loss, like drought, or insects, or disease, maybe too much water, not enough water, all those kind of things that can happen on a farm. So like why would you get it? It's like, what's the purpose? So I have a little example here that we can walk through what that might look like. In my example, we have a situation where a farmer is experiencing a drought. They're a sweet corn farmer. Normally they grow about $100,000 worth of sweet corn. But this year, because of the drought, they're only able to harvest and sell about $25,000, which is a lot less than, you know, what they would expect, especially if that revenue is a huge part of their income and paying for their bills, paying their mortgage. That's putting that farmer in a really tight position to get all the bills paid. With crop insurance, so let's say that this farmer had crop insurance, they would pay about $2,500. You know, note that the actual cost of crop insurance is different depending on which county you're in. So talking to a crop insurance agent is really critical. But in this example, about $2,500 for a 75% coverage of their usual revenue. The farmer would receive, in this situation where they only had $25,000 of sweet corn, they would get a payment of $50,000 to close up that gap between $25,000 and that $75,000 of coverage. So at the end of this bad year, at least they have $75,000 in revenue, when otherwise they would have only had the 25. In a situation where the farmer does not have that crop insurance, they only have that $25,000 in revenue. Maybe they work an off-farm job to close the gaps. Maybe they can't pay their bills and they consider stopping farming. And that's really an outcome none of us want. So it's really critical to have conversations about risk management and really think critically about implementing crop insurance on your operation. So the most important piece about crop insurance is that in order to get it, you have to talk to a crop insurance agent. And so the way that you do that is on the USDA Risk Management Agency on our website, we have an agent locator tool. Crop insurance is interesting. Unlike FSA and NRCS, the speakers before, they have a local service center where you can go work with them directly. Crop insurance is a public-private partnership. So what that means is that the federal government, we subsidize the policies, we write the rules, but we don't sell them to you. In order to buy one, you have to go to a private company who's going to sell you a crop insurance policy. And those crop insurance agents are throughout the whole country. And again, you can find them here on our agent locator tool. Another way to do it, if you don't want to use that, is just talk to your neighbors, talk to other people that farm the same things that you do, and ask maybe who they work with and whether or not they have a strong relationship with that agent, and maybe you want to work with them. Here's a picture of our website for the agent locator tool. You'll land on our website, you'll go to tools, and then from there, the agent locator tool is just right on the list there. So what will you need to participate? There's hundreds of different policies for different crops that cover specific crops. And so the things that you're going to need are specific to all those different policies are different. So you're going to have a conversation with a crop insurance agent to really nail down the specifics of what you're going to need. But generally, what you need are records. The coverage for crop insurance policies is usually either the yield of your crop or the revenue. So like, let's say, again, I'm growing sweet corn, maybe, or maybe just regular field corn. I've got bushels, X number of bushels that I produce in a year in a specific field, and I'm getting a guarantee on that. So I need to have records demonstrating that I'm selling that much, whatever amount I'm growing and selling, I've got records of that transaction that I can bring to my crop insurance agent as proof that, hey, this is my history of production. Similarly, for revenue, you might need to have tax records or other types of records depending on the policy. Again, I'm going to keep hammering this home, but you have to talk to a crop insurance agent. And so find a crop insurance agent that you trust and have that conversation with them. Start it early. Deadlines for crop insurance. So every policy that exists in crop insurance has its own sales closing date. The sales closing date is the last day that you can apply to purchase a new policy or to make changes to an existing policy every year. Generally, it's about a couple months before the growing season would start. I personally recommend, you don't have to do this, but I recommend to anyone that's doesn't currently have a crop insurance policy to start planning like a year in advance of when you actually want one. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road for your first policy because you need to make sure you've got all the records. You need to make sure that you find an agent. You need to make sure you like your agent. And that just takes time. And so farming, you're juggling so many things. You got to make sure that you give yourself the time to be successful and to set up a policy that you're really comfortable with. Some examples of sales closing dates. A corn policy in Aiken County, Minnesota has a sales closing date of March 15th. A great policy for Alameda County, California has a sales closing date of January 31st. So again, different crops are going to have different sales closing dates. And again, to find out which ones might be applicable to the policies that you want, you're going to have those those conversations with your crop insurance agent to figure out the policy that you want, so the coverage that you need, and then it all kind of come from there. So some tips for you as you venture into crop insurance. Find a crop insurance agent you like. The prices are exactly the same because it's subsidized by the federal government. The prices are set, and no matter which agent you work with, it's going to be the same price. So find an agent that you have trust and respect with, and that's really super important. Speak to your crop insurance agent early and often. It takes a lot of time to get all those records organized, and once you have a policy, you're going to have to report things, and having that really strong relationship and frequent communication is going to make sure that you stay eligible and receive the payments for losses that you incur during the growing season. Finally, be prepared. You really need to keep good records for your farm. Once you set up a policy and your agent walks you through what those records you're going to need that are eligible for that policy, you're just going to want to make sure that you come up with a way to keep yourself organized and generate all those records every year so that you stay eligible and get crop insurance payments. And again, this is another plug, and go to your USDA to report your acreage every year. Some extra resources for crop insurance that I'd love to point you all to. On our website, we have the Policyholder Bill of Rights, which walks you through exactly what to expect as a farmer with a crop insurance policy. What kind of service are you entitled to under the law? And then the second one is our Beginner's Guide to Crop Insurance, and this can walk you through all the terminology, all the different kind of moving parts that a beginner should know as they're considering getting a crop insurance policy. It also has all the helpful links that if you're having problems or you have recommendations for how we can do better as an agency for federal crop insurance, how to reach out to us, how to report fraud, waste, and abuse, anything that you should know as a beginner. We try to include there to keep it simple. It's only 6 pages, so it shouldn't take too long to read. It's a good place to start. So thank you for listening. Consider purchasing crop insurance for your operation. I have a couple more slides that I'm going to include when we send these out. It's mostly about the crop insurance benefits for beginning farmers and veteran farmers. You can basically get a slightly cheaper policy, but all of that information is built into our Beginner's Guide to Crop Insurance. So thank you very much for listening.
Michael, I appreciate you. Great presentation. Crop insurance is such a vital part of the total equation, guys. We're giving you guys snapshots here. Michael, we appreciate you again. So we're going to go ahead and close it out here with Jonathan from Rural Development. Jonathan, give us a snapshot on all the different programs Rural Development has to offer for us. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Burns. I'm a business loan and grant analyst for Rural Business Cooperative Service, and I am proud to be the anchor for the my completely unbiased opinion. We've saved the best program for last. The REAP program is one that's near and dear to my heart. It packs a great 1-2 punch. It helps with the sustainability of agricultural producers and rural small businesses by lowering their bottom line and potentially creating additional revenue streams, and also with the sustainability of the planet because it's helping to create renewable energy, clean renewable energy, and conserve energy. So with that, I'm going to turn off my camera. We've had some storms moving through here while I share my screen, and I'm also going to start my timer. So bear with me here. Hopefully you can see my screen. So
looks good, John.
Excellent. Okay, so REAP. Let's start by talking about a brief history. You've heard our lovely and engaging MC Rick Lopez mention the Farm Bill previously, and that's what authorizes REAP. Specifically, Title IX started in 2002. So the program's been around for over 20 years. With each passage of the Farm Bill, it gets updated and improved, in my opinion. The Farm Bill provides, has historically provided approximately $50 million in what we call mandatory funding. And that funding is distributed to the states. So every state gets their own allocation. So applications compete at the state level We have state offices in every state, as well as field offices. So like you've heard other panelists say, we strongly encourage stakeholders that are interested to contact us as early on in the process as possible to be able to help sidestep any potential issues that you may have. The biggest thing to happen with REAP since its inception in 2002 is 22 with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. You've heard me say that REAP has historically been provided $50 million in funding. Well, the IRA provided it with over $2 billion of funding through the next decade. That started back a couple of years ago. We don't have $2 billion left anymore, but just know that the program has seen a huge increase in funding for the general program, and it also instituted a set aside for what we call underutilized technologies and technical assistance. And we'll talk about that briefly in a minute. So the types of assistance that you can get through REAP is you can get a grant only. You can get loan guarantees. So you heard Amanda Robertson talk about loans earlier. We don't do direct loans, they're guaranteed loans. We'll talk about that. And you could also get a combination of a loan and a grant guarantee through the REAP program. So for the project types that are eligible for REAP, for its renewable energy systems, there can be energy efficiency improvements, and there's also energy efficiency equipment and systems, what we call EEE. That one's only a loan guarantee, and it is only eligible for agricultural producers can only access those. So we'll talk briefly about each one of these. So let's start by talking about the grant funding really quickly. So the grant funding can be used for installation of renewable energy systems or the implementation of energy efficiency improvements. The program does have an aspect for that provides for technical assistance, but just know that the energy audit and the renewable energy development assistance programs, what we call EA-RETA, those are only eligible for colleges, for sections of the local government. So they're not eligible for agricultural producers or rural small businesses, but just know that there are entities out there to provide technical assistance for stakeholders interested in applying for the program. This is an old slide, so I do apologize, but since this slide has been made, we came out with an additional program through the IRA called the REAP Technical Assistance Grant, or TAG. So we've had 2 rounds of TAG come through, and throughout the entire country, now we have an army of entities that have received monies from us to provide stakeholders with technical assistance in applying to REAP. So I will drop into the chat a few links at the end of my discussion, but one of them will be a listing of those TAG providers. So if you find yourself in need of some technical assistance, obviously we encourage you to contact our state offices, but there's simply just more of you than there is us. And, oftentimes you're reaching out to a technical assistance provider is the best way to go. So for REAP systems, equipment, and improvements, so it provides guaranteed loan financing and grant funding to agricultural producers and rural small businesses, like I said, for renewable energy systems or to make energy efficiency improvements. The notice of solicitation of applications, that the most recent one that we published in March of 23, announced over $1 billion of funding. It runs through September of 2024. Just know that we are in the middle of finalizing the notice of solicitation of applications for REAP that would be effective October 1st, 2024. And until September, I can only talk about until September 2024 because simply a notice has not been published yet. So I can't speak for anything past September 2024, unfortunately, but I don't know what the appetite is for there to be much change, but who knows? But as of right now, grants can cover up to 50% of your total eligible project costs. Before the IRA came around, it was 25%. The loan guarantees can be up to 75% of your total eligible project costs, and that applies to your combined loan and grant. So unfortunately, you can't get a guarantee and a grant for 100% of your project costs. So just know that if you wanted to try to get a combo there. You heard me talk about underutilized renewable energy technologies. Well, the IRA has a set aside for every year, we get funding a little over 144 million for underutilized technologies, and they're defined as technologies that don't produce greenhouse gases at the project level, and technologies that make up less than 20% of the total grant dollars from the previous 2 years. So that's kind of to try to help level the playing field, because the 600-pound gorilla in the room is solar. Well over 75% of our projects are solar. We're trying to even the playing field for those other technologies that aren't as prevalent in the marketplace. The current notice that we're operating under is announced 6 competitions. So we have been operating with a competition every quarter. The next one coming up is September 30th of 2024. But like I said, beyond that, we can't guarantee if we're going to continue. It just simply hasn't been announced yet. So please stay tuned. The best way for you to keep up to date if you are interested is to check the Federal Register. I will also drop a link to the Federal Register. And all you need to do is go there and search for REAP, R-E-A-P, and you'll be able to see as soon as a notice hits the wire, it'll show up and you'll be able to find out more about the program in terms of, what the future competitions are going to look like, what the future federal grant share amounts are going to be, and whatnot. So let's talk about who's eligible for REAP. Well, the first one, you heard me mention rural small businesses. So rural small business, we don't try to reinvent the wheel. We defer to the SBA. They're the experts. So basically an entity that meets the SBA size standards. So you can't be too big. Everybody has, la-di-da-di everybody that reports legal income to the IRS has what's called a NAICS code, a North American Industrial Classification System code. It's always on your tax return. Sometimes it's called a business code, but that has attached to it a ceiling of either revenue or employees that you need to be underneath in order to be considered a small business. So we follow those rules. And you have to be one of these 4 entities that are listed here: a private for-profit entity, a cooperative, an electric utility, and also a tribal cooperation or other tribal business entities. It is important to note that we are rural development for underneath Rural Business Cooperative Service, and that means that does run through the ethos of everything that we do. It's baked into the bread. So, but small businesses do need to be located in a rural area. The tagline that you see on the screen there, located in a rural area or non-metro community of less than 50,000. I don't personally like saying that because it's much more nuanced than that. If you have trouble sleeping tonight, you can pull open the regulations and read it, or you can go to our mapping website where you simply just put in your address and it'll let you know, because the truth is it's much more complicated than that. It's actually drilled down to the census tract. So I've seen situations where one side of the road is eligible and the other is not. But just know that there is some caveats to the 2 types of eligible entities that there are. Small businesses need to be in a rural area. The next eligible entity type is an agricultural producer. An agricultural producer, as defined by the regulation, is an individual or entity that receives 50% or more of their gross income from agricultural operations. And that can be, crops, livestock, aquaculture, forestry operations, dairy nurseries. And we do have a special carve out for agricultural producers, as they can be basically located anywhere, provided that the project site is co-located with the agricultural operations. So I've done projects when I was in the field before I got to national office. I've done grants for small farms that are located in urban areas. So just because you're not in a rural area doesn't necessarily mean that you're excluded. Again, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your local state office or perhaps one of the technical assistance providers that can help you navigate those waters. This is the link to the eligibility website that I will drop into the chat. But all you have to do is once you go there, you click on Rural Business tab in the first category, and then you pop in your address and you can see it, and you can move the map around, and you'll see it does not follow town or city or county lines. So just realize that it doesn't go by less than 50,000. So let's start talking about what types of projects are eligible for REAP. Well, the first type is the renewable energy systems. And for that, I mean, obviously I mentioned the 800-pound gorilla in the room is solar, but wind is also eligible. Hydro, anaerobic digesters, biomass like ethanol, biodiesel, solid fuels, geothermal is eligible, even ocean or wave power. Excuse me. So the only thing that I do need to note that we do run into often is that the program does have a restriction in that you cannot have any residential aspect to your project. So if you are putting in a renewable energy system, let's say you're putting in a solar system, and it's going to be connected to a metering device that also services a residence, just know that there are additional restrictions that may apply. You would have the option to always install a second meter to simply service the renewable energy system to sidestep those extra requirements. But if you're not going to do that, there are some additional restrictions that could potentially make your project ineligible or potentially reduce your maximum grant available. Again, contact your local state office if you have any questions about that. For energy efficiency projects, we're casting a wide net here. We're talking lighting, cooling, automated controls, ventilation. If you have an energy assessment or an energy audit that documents that the energy efficiency measures that you're looking to implement will save you energy per year, then chances are it's eligible. The one caveat I will mention that I didn't on the other screen is that no matter what type of project you do for REAP, it does need to use commercially available technology. So R&D is not, research and development is not eligible. And for energy efficiency improvements, you do need to have that audit. We need some sort of reasonable assurance that these projects or these measures are going to save you money. But I've done heat curtains for farmers for their greenhouses. We've done high efficiency LED grow lights. Automated controls are huge. You can save a lot of energy by installing automated controls or variable fan drives. I've installed installation. So we really are casting a wide net here. Some of the other additional requirements that I'll mention is
Jonathan, let's start wrapping it up, my friend.
Okay, sorry. There are a lot of other restrictions for your projects. Just know that you can have up to $1 million grant for renewable energy systems, $500,000 for energy efficiency improvements, and there are some requirements for qualifying up to 50%. The slide here, the slide deck that you'll be receiving will have a bunch of additional information, but please know I'd like to leave you with one fact, and that only costs that are directly associated with your project, with your renewable energy system or energy efficiency improvement are eligible. So we don't pay for landscaping. We don't pay for replacing reshingling your roof or anything like that. And then the technical assistance grants, we won't talk about that because we don't have time, but just know there are some other organizations that are designed to help you. The slides will have some good examples for you to tell you how much energy, give you an idea of how much energy you can be saving. And the guaranteed loans, just know that it is a guarantee. You got to go to a bank. You're not writing your payments to USDA. They go up to 25 million. So a lot of them are larger projects. And the energy efficiency equipment, it's for installation of equipment that exceeds current efficiency standards. And the last thing I'll say is, again, I can't stress it enough, is to please contact your state energy coordinators if you have any questions regarding your project. So that's all I got. And with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Jonathan, thank you. Guys, this is really a challenge because you can just see all the programs that rural development brings to the table. Jonathan, we're very privileged to have you and we're grateful for it. Thank you. I know we're under this 10-minute guideline. Guys, this was a great opportunity, though, to just let you know, give you a snapshot of all the programs under the USDA umbrella. It doesn't cover them all, but I want to leave you with something. okay, that they are predicting, okay, we're thinking that by the year 2050, which is 25 years from now, just a little over 25 years, we're going to have to increase our food production per acre by 70%. That means that we're going to have to be innovative. We're going to have cutting edge technology. We're going to have to be able to utilize the USDA resources that are out there to you if we're going to hit that 70% goal in 25 years, folks. The challenge is on you. You're the next generation of farmers. You are the next generation of farmers that are going to feed not only America, but are going to feed the world. I want to thank all of the presenters for doing such a great job. I want to thank Janet, who behind the scenes put all of this together. I want to thank all of the beginning farmer and rancher team that helped assist and put this together. Guys, you guys did a bang up job. This is for you, though. This is for you. Keep that 70% in mind. With that, I'm going to close it out. Thank you all. God bless. Have a wonderful afternoon.